Drop it in the comments below, and if you love crazy stories like this, smash that subscribe button so you don't miss what's coming next. Now, let me ask you something, have you ever had someone take something from you and act like they deserved it? Hold that thought, because this story's about to get juicy. Okay, let's jump in. Meet Jake. Jake's just a regular guy, you know? He's the kind of person you see every day but don't think much about. He works hard. He fixes things like chairs and tables and sometimes even cars. He's got this old truck he drives around. It's not shiny or new. It's kind of beat up, actually. The paint is chipped, and there's a little rust on the sides. But Jake loves it. That truck is his. He worked hard to buy it, and every time he sits in it, he feels proud. It's not fancy, but it's special to him. Jake lives in a small town. You know, one of those places where everyone knows everyone. The houses are close together, and people wave when they walk by. Everyone in town thought they had Jake figured out. They called him Quiet Jake. That's what they said when they saw him. Oh, there's Quiet Jake, fixing something again. He didn't talk a lot. He didn't yell or make a big fuss. If something broke, he'd just grab his tools and fix it. If someone said hi, he'd nod and smile a little. That was Jake. Simple, steady, quiet Jake. But here's the thing, and listen close because this is where it gets good. Jake had a secret. Not a bad secret, like he was hiding something creepy. No, nothing like that. It was a fun secret. A smart secret. Something nobody in that little town would ever guess about him. They all thought he was just a guy who liked his truck and stayed out of trouble. But Jake? He was more than that. Way more. And nobody knew it yet. Not his neighbors, not his friends, not even the lady at the store who sold him nails and screws. Nobody. So, picture this, it's a sunny afternoon. The kind of day where the sky is bright blue, and the air feels warm on your face. Jake's outside his house, working on something. Maybe he's fixing a loose board on his porch or tinkering with his truck. The birds are chirping, and everything feels normal. Just another day in Jake's quiet life. He's got dirt on his hands, and his old baseball cap is pulled down low over his eyes. He's happy, just doing his thing. But then, something happens. Something that's going to turn this regular day into a wild story. Someone decides to mess with Jake. Not just a little tease or a joke, oh no. This is bigger. This is the kind of mess that makes you sit up and go, wait, what? Someone's about to shake up Jake's world, and he's not going to stay quiet forever. That secret he's got. It's about to come out. But not yet. We've got to wait a little. I'll tell you step by step, so you can feel the excitement build up. Let's set the scene some more, okay? Jake's house isn't big. It's small and simple, with a little porch out front and a patchy lawn. His truck is parked right there by the curb. It's not locked because, well, it's a small town. People don't usually steal stuff around here. The truck's got a dent on the door from when Jake accidentally bumped it into a pole last year. He laughs about it now, even though it annoyed him at the time. That truck's been with him through a lot rainy days, long drives, even a trip to the lake with his fishing pole in the back. It's more than just a truck to Jake. It's like a friend. Now, the people in town? They're nice enough. There's Mr. Thompson, who owns the hardware store and always gives Jake a discount because he's a good customer. There's Mrs. Ellie, who lives next door and brings Jake cookies sometimes. She's old and sweet and calls him dear. Then there's the kids who ride their bikes up and down the street, yelling and laughing. It's a peaceful place most of the time. Everyone knows Jake's truck, too. They see it parked there every day, and they don't think much of it. It's just Jake's truck. No big deal. But someone's watching that truck a little too closely today. Someone who doesn't think like the rest of the town. Someone who's got a plan, a bad one. And Jake? He doesn't know it yet, but this sunny afternoon is about to change everything. He's out there, wiping sweat off his forehead, maybe humming a little tune to himself. He's got no idea what's coming. But we do. We're about to see how quiet Jake handles a big problem. And trust me, it's going to be awesome. Let's talk about Jake a bit more so you really get who he is. He's not tall or short, just average. He's got brown hair that's a little messy because he doesn't fuss with it much. He wears old jeans and a faded t-shirt most days. His hands are rough from working, with little cuts and scratches from tools. He's strong, but not in a show-off way. He doesn't lift weights or brag about it. He's strong from lifting heavy stuff at work and carrying boards and fixing things. That's Jake, simple, but tough in his own quiet way. People like Jake because he's nice. He doesn't start fights or talk behind anyone's back. If Mrs. Ellie's fence breaks, he fixes it for free. If the kids kick a ball into his yard, he tosses it back with a grin. That's why everyone calls him Quiet Jake. He's not loud or pushy. He just does his thing and lets everyone else do theirs. But that doesn't mean he's weak. Oh no. Jake's got something inside him, something smart and strong that's been waiting for the right moment to come out. And that moment? It's coming soon. See, this sunny afternoon isn't going to stay peaceful. Someone's about to cross a line. A big line. They're going to mess with Jake in a way he can't ignore. And when they do, we're going to see what Quiet Jake is really made of. Not everyone would handle it like he does. Some people would yell or cry or give up. Not Jake. He's different. He's got that secret, remember? And it's going to make this story so much fun. Let's stretch this out a little more, because I want you to feel like you're right there with Jake. Imagine the sun shining down, making everything warm. The grass is green, and there's a soft breeze moving the leaves on the trees. Jake's got a wrench in his hand, tightening a bolt on his truck. He's focused, but not worried. He likes days like this, calm, easy days where he can just work and think. Maybe he's thinking about fishing this weekend or fixing that squeaky door inside his house. Simple stuff. Jake stuff. The street's quiet right now. The kids are at school, and most people are at work. It's just Jake and the birds and the hum of a lawnmower a few houses down. His truck sits there, old and trusty, soaking up the sun. He pats it like it's a dog when he's done fixing it. Good old girl, he might say under his breath. That's how much he likes it. It's not just a thing to him, it's part of his life. But across the street, something's brewing. Someone's got their eye on that truck. They don't see it the way Jake does. To them, it's not special. It's just, there. And they've got an idea. A sneaky, rotten idea. They think Jake's too quiet to do anything about it. They think he's an easy target. Oh, they're so wrong. But they don't know that yet. And Jake? He's still clueless, just enjoying his day. Let's paint the town a little more so you can see it in your head. The houses are mostly one story, with little gardens out front. Some have flowers, some have gnomes. Jake's house has a mailbox that's a little crooked because a kid crashed into it with a bike once. He never bothered to fix it, it's not a big deal to him. Down the road, there's a gas station where Jake fills up his truck sometimes. Next to that is a diner where people eat burgers and pie. It's a sleepy little place, this town. Nothing big ever happens. Or at least, it didn't until today. Jake's got a routine. He wakes up early, makes coffee, and gets to work. Sometimes he's fixing stuff at home, sometimes he's helping someone else. He's good with his hands. Always has been. His dad taught him how to use tools when he was a kid, and he's been building and fixing ever since. That truck? He's fixed it 100 times. New tires, new battery, little tweaks here and there. It's old, but it runs because Jake takes care of it. So, back to this sunny afternoon. Jake's almost done outside. He's thinking about grabbing a glass of water and sitting on his porch for a bit. The day's been good so far. No problems, no stress. Just him and his truck and the quiet. He doesn't know it yet, but that quiet's about to break. Someone's about to start trouble. Big trouble. And when they do, Jake's going to surprise everyone. Let's slow down even more. Imagine Jake standing up, stretching his back. He's been bent over the truck for a while, and his muscles are a little sore. He wipes his hands on his jeans, leaving a smudge of grease. The sun's still high, and he squints at it for a second. Maybe he's thinking it's a nice day for a drive. He likes driving his truck down the back roads, just him and the open air. It's his way of relaxing. But then, he hears something. A little noise. Maybe it's a car door shutting or footsteps crunching on gravel. He doesn't think much of it at first. It's a small town, people come and go. He turns back to his truck, checking it one last time. Everything's good. He's happy with his work. He doesn't see what's happening yet. He doesn't see the person watching him from across the street, smirking like they've got a big plan. That person? They're trouble. They've been watching Jake for a while now. Not because they hate him or anything, just because they think they can get away with something. They think Jake's too quiet, too nice, too easy to push around. They're wrong, but they don't know it. And Jake? He's still in his own world, enjoying his day. He's got no clue what's about to hit him. So, here we are. The stage is set. Jake's out there, living his simple life. His truck's parked, ready for whatever he needs it for next. The town's quiet, the sun's shining, and everything seems fine. But it's not going to stay that way. Someone's about to mess with Jake, mess with him in a big way. And when they do, we're going to see what happens when quiet Jake stops being so quiet. That's where this story starts, friends. A sunny afternoon, a regular guy, and a truck he loves. Sounds simple, right? But stick with me, because it's about to get wild. Someone's going to try to take something from Jake, and they're going to act like they deserve it. And Jake? He's not going to let it slide. Not this time. His secret's coming out, and it's going to be a ride you won't forget. Okay, let's get into the juicy part of the story now. Things are about to heat up. Enter Karen. Oh boy, Karen's the kind of person you've probably met before. She's loud. She's bossy. She walks around like she's the queen of everything. You know the type, right? Always telling people what to do, always thinking she's better than everyone else. She's not quiet like Jake. Nope. Karen's the opposite. She loves to talk, and she loves to make sure everyone hears her. Karen lived just down the street from Jake. Not too far, just a few houses away. Close enough that they saw each other all the time. Her house was bigger than Jake's. It had a fancy garden with bright flowers and a shiny mailbox that never got dented. Karen liked things to look perfect. She'd stand on her porch with her hands on her hips, looking around like she owned the whole neighborhood. And she had this habit, this annoying little habit of sticking her nose where it didn't belong. If someone parked their bike a little crooked, she'd complain. If a kid left a toy in the yard, she'd huff and puff about it. Karen was always poking into other people's business. So, one day, Karen's out on her porch, chatting with her friend. They're sipping lemonade or something, acting all fancy. That's when she spots Jake's truck. It's parked right there outside his house, same as always. That old, beat-up truck with the chipped paint and the dented door. Jake's pride and joy. But to Karen? Oh, she doesn't see it that way. Not at all. She wrinkles her nose and points at it. That rusty thing, she says, loud enough for Jake to hear. She's not even trying to be quiet. It's an eyesore. Someone ought to get rid of it. Jake's right there, working on his porch. He's got a hammer in his hand, banging nails into a loose board. He hears her. Of course he does. Karen's voice is loud, like a horn honking. But does he say anything? Nope. That's not Jake's way. He just nods a little, like he's saying, okay, whatever. Then he keeps working. Bang, bang, bang goes the hammer. He doesn't yell back. He doesn't argue. He just keeps doing his thing, fixing that porch like nothing happened. Quiet Jake, right? That's what everyone calls him. But Karen? She's not done. Oh no. When Karen gets an idea in her head, she doesn't let it go. She's like a dog with a bone, she keeps chewing on it. She turns to her friend and keeps talking. That truck is so ugly, she says. It makes the whole street look bad. I can't believe he keeps it out there like that. Her friend nods, but you can tell she doesn't really care. She's just agreeing to keep Karen happy. Karen's the kind of person who likes when people agree with her. It makes her feel important. Jake finishes up on the porch and wipes his hands on his jeans. He hears Karen still going on about his truck, but he doesn't look her way. He's not mad, not yet. He's just thinking, let her talk. He's used to people saying stuff. It doesn't bother him much. He likes his truck, and that's what matters to him. So he grabs his tools and heads inside, leaving Karen out there complaining to anyone who'll listen. But here's the thing, Karen doesn't stop. Days go by, and she keeps talking about that truck. She starts telling the neighbors. She knocks on Mrs. Ellie's door, the sweet old lady next to Jake, and says, "Don't you think that truck is awful? It's bringing down the whole street's value." Mrs. Ellie just smiles and says, "Oh, it's not so bad." She likes Jake, and she doesn't mind the truck. But Karen doesn't care what Mrs. Ellie thinks. She moves on to Mr. Thompson at the hardware store. "That truck's a mess," she tells him. Jake should be ashamed. Mr. Thompson shrugs. "It runs fine," he says. Jake keeps it going. But Karen doesn't want to hear that either. Most people ignore her. They're used to Karen being loud and bossy. They just nod and go about their day. But Karen? She keeps pushing. She's like a steamroller, flattening everything in her path. She decides Jake's truck is her big problem now. She doesn't like how it looks. She doesn't like that it's old. She doesn't like that Jake doesn't care what she thinks. And in her head, she starts making a plan. A sneaky, rotten plan. Let's slow this down a bit so you can really picture it. It's a few days later now. The sun's shining again, and Jake's outside washing his truck. He's got a bucket of soapy water and a big sponge. He's scrubbing the dirt off the sides, humming a little song to himself. The truck's looking a little cleaner, but it's still old and rusty. Jake doesn't mind. He likes it just the way it is. He dips the sponge in the water and wipes down the hood, smiling a little. This is his truck, and he's happy taking care of it. Across the street, Karen's watching. She's standing on her porch with her arms crossed, staring at Jake like he's doing something wrong. Her lips are pressed tight, and her eyes are narrow. She doesn't like that truck one bit. To her, it's ugly. It's junk. It doesn't belong on her street. She thinks the neighborhood should look perfect, and Jake's truck is ruining it. She doesn't care that it's his. She doesn't care that he loves it. In her mind, she's right, and Jake's wrong. So, Karen starts talking again. She calls her friend over and points at Jake. "Look at him," she says. "Washing that piece of junk like it's some prize. He's so ridiculous." Her friend laughs a little, but it's fake. She's just going along with Karen. Jake hears them. He's not deaf, but he keeps washing. Scrub, scrub, scrub. He's not going to let Karen ruin his day. He's got better things to do. But Karen's not happy with just talking. She's getting madder every day. She keeps telling people, that truck's got to go. She says it to the mailman. She says it to the kids riding their bikes. She even says it to the guy who mows her lawn. Someone needs to do something about it, she grumbles. And in her head, that someone is her. She's starting to think she's the only one brave enough to fix this problem. Now, let's jump to a big moment. It's a quiet morning a few days later. The sun's just coming up, and the town's still sleepy. Jake's inside his house, probably eating breakfast. Maybe he's got toast and coffee, sitting at his little table. His truck's parked outside, right where it always is. Everything seems normal. But something's different today. Something's off. Jake finishes his coffee and heads outside to start his day. He's got his toolbox in hand, ready to fix something, maybe Mrs. Ellie's gate this time. He steps onto his porch, takes a deep breath of the cool morning air, and looks out at the street. That's when he sees it. Or, really, that's when he doesn't see it. His truck, it's gone. Vanished. Not there. The spot where it's been parked every day for years is empty. Just a patch of gravel and some grass. Jake blinks. He rubs his eyes, thinking maybe he's still waking up. But no, it's really gone. His truck isn't there. He steps off the porch and walks to where it was, looking around like maybe it rolled away or something. But there's nothing. No truck. No note. No sign of it anywhere. Just some tire marks in the dirt, leading away from his house. Tire marks that go straight down the street, and stop right at Karen's driveway. Jake stands there for a second, staring at those marks. His heart starts beating a little faster. He's not mad yet, he's confused. Where's my truck? He thinks. He looks over at Karen's house. Her big, perfect house with the fancy garden. And there, parked in her driveway, he sees it. His truck. His old, beat-up truck with the dented door and the chipped paint. It's sitting there like it belongs to her. Karen's inside, probably sipping her morning tea, acting like nothing's wrong. But Jake? He's starting to feel something. Not anger, not yet. Just a little spark. A little huh? In his head. He's quiet, Jake, sure, but he's not dumb. Those tire marks don't lie. His truck didn't just magically move itself. Someone took it. And those marks? They're pointing right at Karen. Let's stretch this out some more, because this is where the tension starts to build. Jake doesn't rush over to Karen's house right away. That's not his style. He stands there by the empty spot, looking at the tire marks. He squats down and runs his fingers over them, like he's checking to make sure they're real. The dirt's fresh, pushed aside by the tires. He can tell it happened not long ago, maybe last night or early this morning while he was asleep. He stands up and looks around the street. It's still early, so no one's out yet. The kids aren't riding their bikes. Mrs. Ellie's not on her porch. It's just Jake and the quiet. He takes a deep breath and scratches his head under his baseball cap. Okay, he thinks. This is weird. He's not freaking out, though. He's calm. He's thinking. That's what Jake does, he thinks before he acts. But inside, that spark is growing. He loves that truck. It's his. He worked hard for it, fixed it up, made it his own. And now it's gone? Sitting in Karen's driveway like she has every right to it? That doesn't sit right with him. He's not yelling or stomping around, but you can bet he's not happy. Quiet Jake is starting to feel something, and it's not good. Let's talk about Karen for a minute. Why would she do this? Well, she's been complaining about that truck for days. Weeks, even. To her, it's not just a truck, it's a problem. It's ugly. It's old. It doesn't fit her idea of a perfect street. She's been telling everyone it needs to go. And maybe, just maybe, she got tired of waiting for Jake to get rid of it. Maybe she decided to take matters into her own hands. That's Karen for you, bossy, pushy, and always thinking she's right. So, picture this, it's the night before. The town's dark and quiet. Jake's asleep in his house, dreaming about fishing or fixing something. Karen's awake, though. She's got an idea. She sneaks out of her house, maybe in her slippers and a robe, who knows, and walks over to Jake's truck. It's not locked. Why would it be? This is a small town. She opens the door, climbs in, and finds the keys Jake keeps under the seat. He's not hiding them, he just leaves them there for convenience. Karen doesn't care. She starts the truck, and it rumbles to life. She drives it slowly, so no one hears right to her driveway. Then she parks it, shuts it off, and goes back inside like nothing happened. That's what Jake's dealing with now. He doesn't know all that yet, but he's starting to figure it out. He looks at those tire marks again. He looks at his truck in Karen's driveway. And he's thinking, did she really take it? He's not sure yet, but he's got a hunch. A strong one. And that hunch is making that spark inside him grow a little bigger. Jake's not the kind of guy to storm over and bang on her door, not yet. He's still calm on the outside. But inside, he's starting to feel the tension. His truck's gone. Karen's got it. And she's acting like it's no big deal. That's not okay with him. He's been nice. He's been quiet. He's let her talk and complain all she wants. But taking his truck? That's a step too far. Let's keep going with this. Jake walks a little closer to Karen's house, not all the way, just a few steps. He's looking at his truck, sitting there in her driveway like it's hers. The sun's starting to climb higher now, and the light bounces off the rusty spots. He can see the dent on the door from here. It's definitely his truck. No doubt about it. He tilts his head, thinking. Why would she do this? He wonders. He's not mad enough to shout yet, but he's getting there. He's starting to feel that slow burn, like when you're annoyed, but it's building into something more. He's been patient with Karen. He's ignored her complaining. He's let her say whatever she wants. But this is different. This is his truck. His stuff. And Karen's crossed a line. The street's still quiet, but Jake's mind isn't. He's piecing it together. The tire marks. The truck in her driveway. All her talk about how much she hates it. It's adding up. He's not sure what to do yet, but he knows one thing, he's not going to just let this go. Quiet Jake's got limits, and Karen's about to find that out. So, here's where we are. Karen's been loud and bossy, picking on Jake's truck like it's her job. She's complained to everyone, pushed, and now she's gone too far, she's taken it. Jake's waking up to a big surprise, and he's starting to feel the tension. He's not yelling yet. He's not running over to fight. But that spark inside him, it's growing. And soon, it's going to turn into something big. Alright, let's keep this rolling. We're right in the middle of the tension now, and it's only getting thicker. Jake's standing there, staring at those tire marks leading to Karen's driveway. His truck, his trusty, beat-up truck, is sitting pretty in her yard like she's claimed it for herself. He's not yelling yet. He's not stomping over to her house. That's not Jake's way, at least, not right off the bat. But inside, oh, something's stirring. That little spark of annoyance is growing, like a tiny fire that's about to catch some dry leaves and turn into a blaze. Let's picture Jake a little more. He's got his hands in his pockets now, rocking back on his heels. His baseball cap is pulled low, shading his eyes as he squints at Karen's house. The morning air's still cool, and there's a little dew on the grass under his boots. He's quiet on the outside, but his brain's buzzing. She took it, he's thinking. She really took my truck. He's not 100% sure yet, he doesn't have proof right in his hands, but those tire marks are like a big arrow pointing straight at Karen. And he knows her. He's seen how she acts. This feels like something she'd do. Jake takes a step closer to the street, still keeping his distance from Karen's place. He's not ready to march over there yet. He's the kind of guy who likes to think things through. He's not hot-headed. He doesn't explode like some people do. But that doesn't mean he's weak. No way. Jake's tough in his own way, quiet tough. The kind of tough that sneaks up on you when you're not looking. And right now, he's starting to feel pushed. Pushed in a way he hasn't been before. Let's talk about Karen again, because she's the one stirring this pot. Karen's not outside yet, it's early, and she's probably still inside her fancy house. Maybe she's sipping coffee from a mug that says something silly like Queen of the Street. Her house is all neat and tidy, with curtains that match her flower beads. Everything about Karen screams, I'm in charge. She's got that attitude like she's the boss of everyone and everything. And Jake's truck? To her, it's not just a truck. It's a big, rusty thorn in her perfect little world. Karen's been complaining about that truck for weeks. Every time she sees it, her nose scrunches up like she smelled something bad. She's told anyone who'll listen, Mrs. Ellie, Mr. Thompson, even the guy who delivers the newspaper, that it's ugly. It's junk, she says. It makes our street look trashy. She doesn't care that it's Jake's. She doesn't care that he loves it. To her, it's in her way. And Karen doesn't like things in her way. So, let's imagine what happened last night, because that's when this all went down. It's dark out. The stars are twinkling, and the town's asleep. Jake's in his house, snoring away after a long day of fixing stuff. His truck's parked outside, same as always. Across the street, Karen's up late. Maybe she's pacing in her kitchen, muttering to herself. That truck, she says under her breath. That stupid, ugly truck. She's been thinking about it too much. It's bugging her more than it should. And then, she gets an idea. A bad idea. Karen grabs a flashlight and slips on her shoes. She doesn't even change out of her pajamas, why would she? She's just going across the street. She tiptoes out her front door, looking around to make sure no one's watching. The street's quiet. No cars, no lights in the windows. Just the sound of crickets chirping. She scurries over to Jake's truck, her flashlight bouncing a little as she moves. She's nervous, but she's also excited. She thinks she's so clever. The truck's not locked, Jake never locks it. It's a small town, and he trusts people. Big mistake this time. Karen opens the door real slow, wincing when it creaks a little. She climbs in, and the seat squeaks under her. She finds the keys right where Jake always leaves them, tucked under the seat. She grins to herself, like she's some kind of master thief. She turns the key, and the engine rumbles to life. It's loud in the quiet night, but no one wakes up. She shifts into gear and drives it super slow right to her driveway. Then she parks it, hops out, and sneaks back inside. She's giggling to herself, thinking, problem solved. That's what Jake's up against now. He doesn't know all those details yet, but he's starting to figure it out. Back to this morning, Jake's still standing there, looking at his truck in Karen's driveway. He's putting the pieces together. The tire marks. The way Karen's been talking. The fact that his truck's right there at her house. It's not hard to guess what happened. And that spark inside him. It's turning into a flame now. He's not just confused anymore, he's annoyed. Really annoyed. Jake kicks at the gravel a little, sending a few pebbles skittering across the road. He's thinking hard. She can't just take my truck, he tells himself. That's not right. He's been nice to Karen. He's ignored her whining. He's let her say whatever she wants about his truck. But taking it? Parking it at her house like it's hers? That's too much. Even for quiet Jake, that's crossing a line. Let's stretch this out some more, because the tension's building and we want to feel it. Jake starts walking slowly toward Karen's house. Not all the way, just a few steps closer. He stops and stares at his truck again. He can see the little scratch on the bumper from when he backed into a tree last summer. He can see the faded sticker on the back window of fish, because he loves fishing. It's his truck, no question about it. And there it is, sitting in Karen's driveway like she owns it. He tilts his head and frowns. What's she playing at? He wonders. He's trying to understand. Does she think he won't notice? Does she think he'll just shrug and let her keep it? That doesn't make sense to him. Jake's not the kind of guy who lets people walk all over him, not when it's something this big. He's quiet, sure, but he's not a pushover. The street's starting to wake up now. A bird chirps overhead. A car rolls by down the road, probably someone heading to work. Jake glances around, wondering if anyone else saw what happened. Did Mrs. Ellie hear the truck last night? Did Mr. Thompson notice anything funny? Probably not, they're all used to Karen being loud and bossy. They probably didn't think she'd go this far. Jake takes another step closer. He's still not at Karen's house, but he's getting there. His hands are out of his pockets now, hanging by his sides. His jaw's tight, and his eyes are locked on that truck. He's feeling something stronger now, not just annoyance, but a little bit of anger. It's slow, like a pot of water starting to simmer. He doesn't boil over fast, but he's getting warmer. Let's imagine what's going on in Karen's head right now. She's inside, probably feeling pretty proud of herself. She's sitting at her kitchen table, eating toast or something, smiling like she's won a prize. That truck's out of sight now, she might be thinking. The street looks so much better. She doesn't care that it's Jake's. She doesn't think about how he feels. To her, it's all about her street, her rules. She's convinced herself she did the right thing. But Karen's wrong. She doesn't know Jake as well as she thinks she does. She sees him as quiet Jake, the guy who nods and fixes stuff and never makes a fuss. She thinks he's soft. She thinks he'll just let this slide. Oh, she's so wrong. Jake's quiet, but he's not weak. And taking his truck? That's not something he's going to ignore. Jake's standing closer to the tire marks now. He squats down again, looking at them up close. They're deep, pressed hard into the dirt. He can see the tread pattern, it's definitely his truck's tires. He stands up and follows them with his eyes, all the way to Karen's driveway. There's no denying it now. She didn't just borrow it. She didn't ask. She took it. And that's starting to sink in for Jake. He straightens up and crosses his arms. His face is serious now, not smiling, not calm. He's thinking about what to do. He could walk over and knock on her door. He could ask her why she did it. But he knows Karen. She'll probably laugh or make some excuse. Oh, Jake, it's not a big deal, she might say. Or, I was just helping the neighborhood. He can already hear her voice in his head, all loud and smug. The tension's thick now. Jake's not just annoyed, he's mad. Not screaming mad, not yet. But mad enough that his hands are clenching into fists. He loves that truck. It's his. He's worked on it, driven it, taken care of it. And Karen thinks she can just take it? Just because she doesn't like how it looks? That's not fair. That's not right. And Jake's starting to feel like he's had enough. Let's keep going. The sun's higher now, warming up the morning. A few more people are out. Mrs. Ellie steps onto her porch with a cup of tea, waving at Jake. He waves back, but it's a small wave. He's distracted. She doesn't notice the truck's gone yet. She's too far to see Karen's driveway. Jake doesn't say anything to her. He's not ready to tell anyone yet. He's still figuring this out. He takes a deep breath and lets it out slow. Okay, he thinks. She took it? Now what? He's not sure, but he knows he's not letting it go. He's not going to just shrug and walk away. That's not who he is, not when it's something this important. His truck's not just a thing. It's part of him. And Karen's messed with the wrong guy. The street's getting busier. Kids are starting to come out, riding their bikes and laughing. A dog barks somewhere nearby. But Jake's still focused. He's staring at that truck, and the tension's building inside him. He's been patient. He's been quiet. He's let Karen talk and complain and act like she's the boss. But this is too much. And soon, Karen's going to find out what happens when quiet Jake stops being so quiet. Let's add a little more. Jake turns and walks back to his porch, but he's not giving up. He's thinking. Planning. He sits on the steps and rests his elbows on his knees, staring across at Karen's house. He's not rushing in, he's too smart for that. But he's not backing down either. That truck's his, and he's going to get it back. He doesn't know how yet, but he's got an idea brewing. Something clever. Something Karen won't see coming. The tension's everywhere now. It's in Jake's tight jaw. It's in the way he's sitting, all stiff and focused. It's in the air between his house and Karen's. She thinks she's won. She thinks she's in control. But she's wrong. Jake's not done. Not by a long shot. And this story? It's just getting started. So, here we are, Jake's mad, Karen's smug, and the truck sitting there like a big, rusty challenge. The tension's thick, and something's got to give. Stick with me, because things are about to get wild. Alright, friends, let's dive back into the story. Things are heating up now, and Jake's about to show us he's not as simple as everyone thinks. Here we go. Jake wasn't dumb. Not even a little bit. He knew something was up when he saw those tire marks leading to Karen's driveway. So, after staring at them for a while, he made up his mind. He put his hands in his pockets, took a deep breath, and started walking over to Karen's place. It wasn't a long walk, just a few houses down the street, but it felt big. His boots crunched on the gravel, and the morning sun was shining bright. He wasn't mad yet, not all the way, but he was ready to find out what was going on. When he got to Karen's driveway, there it was, his truck. His old, beat-up truck with the chipped paint and the dented door. It was parked right there, neat as you please, like it belonged to her. Jake stopped and stared at it for a second. He could see the little scratch on the bumper and the faded fish sticker on the back window. Yep, no doubt about it, that was his truck. Not Karen's. His. He walked up to her front door. The house looked all fancy, with its perfect flowers and shiny mailbox. Jake didn't care about that. He just wanted answers. He knocked 3 solid knocks, loud enough to make sure she heard. The door swung open, and there was Karen. She had a cup of coffee in her hand and a big, smug smile on her face. She looked at Jake like he was a kid who'd lost his toy. "Oh, this," she said, waving her hand toward the truck. Her voice was all sassy, and she let out a little laugh. "I borrowed it. You weren't using it, and I needed to haul some stuff. You'll get it back, eventually." She said eventually like it was a joke, like she didn't really mean it. That smug laugh stuck in Jake's ears. It was the kind of laugh that says, "I'm better than you." Jake's jaw tightened. You know that feeling when you clench your teeth because something's not right? That's what he did. He could feel his face getting a little hot, but he stayed calm. He wasn't going to yell, not yet. That's not how Jake works. He looked right at her and said, "That's my truck, Karen. Give it back. Now." His voice was steady, not loud, but firm. He meant it. Karen. She didn't even blink. She rolled her eyes like, big time, and sighed. "Relax, Jake, she said. It's not like it's worth much. I did you a favor taking it off your hands. A favor? Jake couldn't believe it. His truck wasn't fancy, sure, but it was his. He loved it. And here she was, acting like she was doing him some big kindness by stealing it. Before he could say anything else, she stepped back and slammed the door right in his face. Bam. Just like that. Jake stood there for a second, staring at the closed door. The sound of it slamming echoed in his head. He blinked a few times, like he wasn't sure that just happened. But it did. Karen had his truck, and she wasn't giving it back. Not today, at least. He turned around slow and walked back to his house. His boots dragged a little on the ground. He wasn't happy, not one bit, but he didn't let it show. Not yet. Days went by after that. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Karen didn't budge. She didn't bring the truck back. She didn't even say sorry. Nope. Instead, she got bolder. She started driving it around town. Can you believe that? Jake's truck, his truck rolling down the streets with Karen behind the wheel. She'd wave at people like it was hers all along. Hi, she'd say, smiling big and proud. Nice day, isn't it? People saw her, Mrs. Ellie, Mr. Thompson, the kids on their bikes. They all saw Karen driving Jake's truck like she owned it. Folks in town started whispering. You know how small towns are, everyone talks. They'd see Karen driving by, and they'd turn to each other and say, isn't that Jake's truck? Someone else would nod and go, yep, sure is. Wonder why he's letting her have it? They couldn't figure it out. Jake was quiet Jake, right? The guy who fixed stuff and never made a fuss. Why wasn't he fighting harder? Why wasn't he mad? They didn't get it. Some people even thought maybe he didn't care. Guess Jake's okay with it, they'd say, shrugging. But here's where it gets good, really good. Jake wasn't just sitting there doing nothing. Oh no. He wasn't okay with it. Not even close. He was watching. Waiting. Planning. Every time Karen drove that truck, Jake saw it. He'd be outside fixing something, maybe Mrs. Ellie's gate or his own porch, and he'd look up. There she'd go, cruising by in his truck, waving like a queen. His jaw would tighten again, but he didn't yell. He didn't run after her. He just watched. See, Jake had a plan. He wasn't dumb, remember? He was smart, quiet smart. Every time Karen bragged or drove by, he added it to his list. Not a real list on paper, just one in his head. A list of everything she did. Monday. She drove it to the store. Tuesday. She hauled some bags of dirt for her garden. Wednesday. She parked it crooked in her driveway and laughed about it to her friend. Jake saw it all. He heard it all. And he kept track. Let's slow this down a bit so you can picture it. It's a sunny afternoon, a few days after Jake knocked on Karen's door. He's outside his house, sitting on his porch steps with a glass of water. The street's busy now, kids are riding bikes, and a dog's barking down the road. Jake's just sitting there, looking calm as ever. But then he hears it, the rumble of his truck. He knows that sound anywhere. It's the way the engine grumbles a little because it's old. He looks up, and sure enough, there's Karen. She's driving slow, showing off. Her window's down, and she's got one arm hanging out, waving at Mrs. Ellie on her porch. Hey, Ellie, she calls, all cheerful. Got myself a truck now. Mrs. Ellie waves back, but she looks confused. She knows that's Jake's truck. Everyone does. Karen doesn't care. She keeps driving, grinning like she's won something big. Jake takes a sip of his water and watches her go. His eyes narrow a little, but he doesn't move. He doesn't say a word. Inside, though, that list is growing. She's driving it again, he thinks. Waving like it's hers. He sets his glass down and leans back on his hands. He's not mad enough to jump up, not yet, but he's getting there. Every time she does this, it's like she's poking him with a stick. Poke, poke, poke. And Jake? He's starting to feel it. Let's stretch this out more. The next day, Jake's in his yard, pulling weeds. It's hot out, and he's got sweat on his forehead. He's bent over, tugging at the grass, when he hears that rumble again. He stands up straight and wipes his hands on his jeans. Here comes Karen, rolling by in his truck. This time, she's got a big bag of groceries in the back like she's been shopping with his truck. She doesn't even look at Jake. She just drives past, humming a little tune, acting like everything's fine. Jake watches her go. His hands ball up into fists for a second, but then he lets them go. He's not ready to fight, not out loud, anyway. But that list in his head? It's getting longer. Groceries now, he thinks. She's using my truck for groceries. He shakes his head a little and goes back to pulling weeds. He's calm on the outside, but inside, something's building. Something big. People keep talking, too. Mr. Thompson sees Jake at the hardware store later that day. "Hey, Jake," he says, scratching his head. "Saw Karen driving your truck again. You okay with that?" Jake shrugs and grabs a pack of nails. "Not really," he says, real quiet. Mr. Thompson raises an eyebrow but doesn't push it. "Huh," he says. "Thought you'd be madder." Jake just smiles a little, not a big smile, just a tiny one. "I'm working on it," he says. Mr. Thompson doesn't know what that means, but we do. Jake's got a plan. Days keep passing, and Karen keeps pushing. One morning, Jake's fixing a bike for one of the neighborhood kids. He's got a wrench in his hand, tightening a wheel, when Karen pulls up in his truck right in front of his house. She hops out, leaving the door open, and walks over to her friend's car across the street. "Just dropping off some stuff," she calls, loud and proud. She doesn't even look at Jake. She's acting like the truck's hers forever now. The kid, little Tommy, looks up at Jake. "That's your truck, right?" he asks. Jake nods. "Yep." Tommy frowns. "Why's she got it?" Jake doesn't answer right away. He tightens the wheel and hands the bike back. "She won't have it long," he says, real calm. Tommy doesn't get it, but he rides off happy. Jake, though. He's adding that to his list. "Parked it right in front of me," he thinks. "Big mistake, Karen. Let's keep going." Jake's not just watching now, he's starting to do little things. Small things. Smart things. One day, he grabs his old camera, the one he hasn't used in years. It's got a little dust on it, but it still works. He starts taking pictures. Not big, obvious pictures, just quick ones. Snap, he gets Karen driving by. Snap, he gets the truck in her driveway. Snap, he gets her unloading bags from the back. He's quiet about it. No one sees him do it. But he's building something. That list in his head? It's turning into proof. Another day, he walks to the library. It's a little building at the end of town, with creaky floors and lots of books. Jake's not a big reader, but he's there for a reason. He sits at a computer and looks up stuff about trucks and laws and what happens when someone takes something that's not theirs. He writes things down on a little piece of paper. "Borrowed without asking? That's stealing," he reads. He nods to himself. Good to know. He's learning, and he's getting ready. Karen doesn't know any of this. She's too busy showing off. She drives that truck everywhere now, to the store, to her friend's house, even to the park. She parks it sloppy, takes up 2 spots, and laughs about it. "This old thing's so handy," she says to anyone who'll listen. People nod, but they're starting to wonder. "Isn't that Jake's?" they whisper. Karen just shrugs. "He doesn't need it," she says. Oh, she's so wrong. Jake's list is long now. Every time she drives by, every time she brags, he adds it up. He's got pictures. He's got notes. He's got a plan. He's not just sitting there anymore, he's moving, slow and steady, like a turtle that knows it'll win the race. People think he's not fighting, but he is. He's fighting smart. And that list? It's about to change everything. Let's paint this some more. It's a week later now. Jake's outside, fixing his mailbox. It's still crooked from that kid on the bike. He's got a hammer in his hand, banging nails, when Karen rolls up again. This time, she stops right in front of him. She leans out the window and grins. "Hey, Jake," she calls. "This truck's great for hauling my garden stuff. Thanks for letting me use it." She laughs and drives off, kicking up dust. Jake stops hammering. He watches her go, and his eyes narrow. Letting her use it? He thinks. I never said that. That's the last straw. He's been patient. He's been quiet. But now he's done waiting. He puts the hammer down and wipes his hands on his jeans. That list in his head, it's full. That plan he's been making, it's ready. Karen thinks she's winning, but she's not. Jake's about to turn this whole thing around. The tension's huge now. Karen's pushing and pushing, driving that truck like it's hers. People are whispering, wondering what Jake's doing. And Jake? He's been watching, waiting, planning. He's got pictures. He's got notes. He's got something up his sleeve. It's not big and loud, not yet, but it's coming. And when it hits, Karen's going to wish she never touched that truck. So, here we are. Jake's not dumb. He's smart. He's been letting Karen think she's in charge, but she's not. Every little thing she does, every time she brags, it's making his plan stronger. That list? It's about to change everything. Stick with me, friends, this is getting good. Alright, friends, buckle up. This is the part of the story where everything explodes in a good way. We've been waiting for this, and it's gonna be awesome. Let's jump right in. One evening, Karen decided to throw a big barbecue at her house. She was super excited about it. She invited half the town, Mrs. Ellie, Mr. Thompson, the kids on their bikes, even the guy who delivers the mail. Her backyard was full of people laughing and eating. There were tables with hamburgers, hot dogs, and big bowls of chips. Music was playing, and the smell of barbecue floated through the air. Everyone was having a good time. But Karen? She had a plan to show off. And guess what she wanted to show off? Jake's truck. She parked it right in her backyard, where everyone could see it. That old, beat-up truck with the chipped paint and the dented door, it was sitting there like it was her shiny new toy. She'd washed it a little, so it looked cleaner than usual, and she stood next to it, smiling big. People walked by, and she'd point at it. Look at this, she'd say, all proud. I fixed up the neighborhood by getting this thing. Then she laughed and said, finders keepers, right. She was acting like the truck was hers, like she'd won it fair and square. People nodded and smiled, but some of them looked confused. They knew it was Jake's truck. Everyone did. Karen didn't care. She was having her moment. She flipped burgers and waved at everyone, acting like the queen of the party. The truck was her prize, and she wanted the whole town to see it. She'd been driving it around for days, weeks, even, and now she was showing it off like a trophy. Finders keepers, she kept saying, laughing every time. She thought she was so clever. She thought she'd gotten away with it. Oh, she was so wrong. That's when Jake showed up. Quiet as ever, he walked right into her backyard. No big entrance, no loud yelling, just Jake, stepping through the gate like he did every day. He wasn't smiling, but he wasn't frowning either. His face was calm, steady, like always. He had on his old jeans and his baseball cap, and in his hand, he was holding something, a folder. A plain, brown folder, nothing fancy. But that folder? It was about to change everything. Behind him, something else rolled up. A cop car. Yep, a real police car, with its lights flashing red and blue. It stopped right outside Karen's house, and a cop got out. He was tall, with a serious face, and he walked slow, like he had all the time in the world. People at the barbecue turned to look. The music kept playing, but the talking got quieter. Everyone was wondering, what's going on? Karen didn't notice at first, she was too busy flipping a burger and laughing with her friend. But then she saw Jake. And then she saw the cop. Jake didn't wait. He stepped right into the middle of the backyard, where everyone could see him. The crowd went quiet, super quiet. You could hear the crickets starting to chirp in the evening air. Jake looked at Karen, straight in the eyes, and said, Karen. His voice wasn't loud, but it was clear. Loud enough for everyone to hear. You've got one chance to explain why you stole my truck. Karen froze. Her spatula dropped a little, and she turned to face him. She laughed a quick, nervous laugh and shook her head. Stole, she said, like it was the silliest thing she'd ever heard. Please, Jake, don't be dramatic. She rolled her eyes and waved her hand, like she could brush him off. I borrowed it. You weren't using it? Calm down. She tried to laugh again, but it didn't sound real this time. People were staring now, and she didn't like it. But Jake? He didn't move. He didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. He just stood there, calm as could be, and opened that folder in his hands. The crowd leaned in a little, trying to see. What was in there? What did Jake have? Karen's smile started to fade. She didn't know what was coming, but she could feel something big was about to happen. Jake pulled out some papers. First, he held up pictures, big, clear pictures he'd taken with his old camera. Here's you driving my truck, he said, showing one to the crowd. It was Karen, behind the wheel, waving like she always did. People gasped a little. Then he held up another. Here's you parking it in your driveway. Another picture, Karen unloading bags from the back. And here's you hauling stuff with it. Picture after picture, all showing Karen with his truck. The crowd started whispering. That's Jake's truck, they said. She's been using it this whole time. Karen's face changed. Her smug little smile was gone now. She looked mad, but also a little scared. So what? She snapped. Pictures don't mean anything. I told you, I borrowed it. She crossed her arms and stuck her chin out, like she was daring him to keep going. Big mistake. Jake didn't stop. He pulled out more papers, old ones, a little wrinkled. These are receipts, he said. From when I bought the truck. It's mine. I paid for it. Not you. He held them up high so everyone could see. The dates were there, the price, his name, proof it was his. The whispers got louder. It's really Jake's, people said. She didn't buy it. Then came the big one, the kicker. Jake pulled out one more paper, and this one had a stamp on it. A big, red stamp that said police report. He held it up and looked right at Karen. This, he said, is a report for Grand Theft Auto. The crowd gasped loud this time. Grand Theft Auto? That's a big deal. It's when you steal something big, like a car or a truck. Jake kept going. I've been watching you, Karen. I've been writing it all down. Every time you drove it, every time you bragged. It's all here. And it's stealing. Karen's face went white. Like, all the color just drained out of it. She opened her mouth to say something, but nothing came out. She looked around at the crowd, Mrs. Ellie, Mr. Thompson, all the neighbors, and they were staring at her. Not smiling anymore. Not nodding. Just staring. She'd been caught, and everyone knew it. That's when the cop stepped forward. He'd been standing back, watching, but now it was his turn. He walked up next to Jake and looked at Karen. Ma'am, he said, real serious, that's a felony charge. Step away from the vehicle. His voice was deep and calm, but it meant business. A felony? That's super serious, like, go to jail serious. Karen's eyes got wide. She shook her head fast. No, wait, she said. This is a mistake. I didn't steal it. I just borrowed it. The cop didn't budge. Step away, he said again. Karen took a step back, her hands shaking a little. She looked at the truck, then at Jake, then at the cop. She didn't know what to do. The crowd was buzzing now, whispering, pointing, gasping. She stole it? They said. Karen stole Jake's truck? It was all anyone could talk about. And Jake? He just stood there, calm as could be. He didn't yell. He didn't cheer. He didn't even smile. He just watched, holding that folder like it was his shield. Turns out, Jake wasn't just some quiet guy. Oh no. He'd been busy. He'd been smart. All those days Karen was driving his truck around, bragging and laughing, Jake was working. He took pictures. He kept receipts. He went to the library and learned about the law. He talked to the police and filed a report. He documented everything, every single thing Karen did. And he knew the law better than she ever dreamed. Let's stretch this out some more, because this moment is huge. Picture the backyard. The sun's going down now, turning the sky orange and pink. The barbecue's still going, but no one's eating anymore. The burgers are getting cold, and the music's just background noise. Everyone's gathered around Jake and Karen and the cop. Mrs. Ellie's holding her tea, her mouth open. Mr. Thompson's scratching his head, muttering, "Well, I'll be." The kids have stopped running around there peeking through the crowd, trying to see. Karen's starting to panic. She's waving her hands, talking fast. "This is ridiculous," she says. "Jake, tell them. Tell them I didn't steal it. I was just using it." She's yelling now, but it's not smug anymore. It's scared. She knows she's in trouble, big trouble. She looks at the cop. "You can't arrest me. It's just a truck. It's not even nice." But the cop doesn't care how nice it is. Stealing, and the law says so. Jake finally speaks again. "You didn't borrow it, Karen," he says, real quiet but firm. "You took it. You didn't ask. You didn't tell me. You just took it and acted like it was yours. That's not borrowing. That's stealing." His words hang in the air, heavy and true. The crowd nods. He's right, they think. She didn't ask. Karen's shaking her head so fast it's like it might fall off. "No, no, no," she says. "This is crazy. I was helping the neighborhood. That truck's ugly. I made it better." She's grasping at anything now, trying to make it sound okay. But no one's buying it. They've seen the pictures. They've heard Jake. They know the truth. The cop steps closer to Karen. "Ma'am, we're taking the truck back to its owner," he says. "And you're coming with me to answer some questions." Karen's eyes get even wider. "What?" she shrieks. "You can't do that. This is my party." But the cop just shakes his head. "Doesn't matter," he says. "Law's the law." Another cop car pulls up, now 2 cars. The second cop gets out and walks over to the truck. He nods at Jake. "This yours?" he asks. Jake nods back. "Yep." The cop starts checking it out, making sure it's okay. Jake's still standing there, holding his folder, watching it all happen. Karen's perfect little world, the one where she's the boss and gets whatever she wants, is falling apart right in front of everyone. Let's keep going. The crowd's buzzing louder now. People are talking over each other. "I can't believe it," Mrs. Ellie says, sipping her tea. "She stole it right under our noses." Mr. Thompson nods. "Jake's smarter than I thought," he says. Quiet, but sharp. The kids are giggling, pointing at Karen. "She's in trouble," they whisper. It's chaos, but Jake's still calm. He's not gloating. He's not laughing. He's just Jake. Karen's yelling at the cop now. "This is unfair," she says. "I didn't mean to steal it. I was just keeping it." "But that doesn't make sense, and everyone knows it." The cop puts a hand up. "Save it for the station," he says. He's not mean, just firm. He's doing his job. Karen stamps her foot like a kid, but it doesn't help. She's caught. The second cop walks over with a tow truck driver who just showed up. "We'll take it back to your place," he tells Jake. Jake nods again. "Thanks," he says, real simple. The tow truck hooks up to his truck, and people step back to watch. Karen's shouting, "That's mine. You can't take it." But no one listens. It's not hers. It never was. Let's stretch this out even more. The tow truck starts pulling Jake's truck out of the backyard. It bumps a little over the grass, and the crowd moves aside. Karen's running after it, waving her arms. "Stop! Stop!" she yells, but the cops block her. "Ma'am, calm down," the first cop says. She doesn't. She's losing it now. Her hair's messy, her face is red, and she's screaming like a baby who lost her toy. Jake watches the truck go. It's his again, and he knows it. He closes the folder and tucks it under his arm. He doesn't need to say anything else, his proof did the talking. The crowd's still gasping and whispering. "Grand Theft Auto," they say. That's a big deal. They can't believe quiet Jake pulled this off. But he did. He'd been planning it all along, and Karen never saw it coming. Karen's perfect barbecue is ruined. The food's cold, the music's off, and everyone's talking about her, not in a good way. She thought she was the star, but now she's the bad guy. Jake. He's the hero. Quiet, smart Jake, who didn't yell or fight, just waited and won. So, here we are, the big reveal. Jake wasn't just some quiet guy. He was a quiet guy with a plan. Pictures, receipts, a police report, he had it all. And Karen? Her smug little game fell apart right in front of the whole town. The truck's going home, and she's in trouble. What a night. Okay, friends, we're at the end of this wild ride. The big moment just happened, and now it's time to see how everything shakes out. Let's get into it. Karen was in big trouble now. After Jake showed everyone those pictures, receipts, and that police report stamped Grand Theft Auto, she didn't know what to do. Her face was white, and her hands were shaking. She stood there in her backyard, with the whole town watching, and tried to talk her way out of it. Wait, she said, her voice all loud and fast. This is a mistake. I didn't steal it. I was just borrowing it. She waved her arms around, like that would make everyone believe her. But nobody did. The evidence was too strong. Jake had those pictures, snapshots of her driving his truck all over town. He had the receipts proving it was his, with his name right there on the paper. And that police report? It was the real deal, with a big red stamp from the cops. Karen couldn't wiggle out of this one, no matter how much she talked. She looked at the cop and said, "You can't do this. It's my party. I didn't mean it." But the cop just shook his head. "Doesn't matter," he said. "You took it. That's stealing." The crowd was still buzzing from the barbecue. People were whispering and pointing. Mrs. Ellie sipped her tea and said, "Well, I never." Mr. Thompson nodded and muttered, "She's done for now." Even the kids were giggling, watching Karen try to argue. But it was no use. The cops weren't listening to her excuses. They had the facts, and the facts said Karen was wrong. So, here's what happened next. The second cop, the one who came with the tow truck, started hooking up Jake's truck. The tow truck was big and noisy, with a loud beep 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 as it backed up. The crowd stepped back to give it room. Karen ran over, shouting, "No. You can't take it. That's mine." But the cop put up his hand. "Ma'am, step back," he said, real calm but firm. Karen didn't want to, but she had to. The tow truck driver kept working, and soon, Jake's truck was lifted up, ready to go. Jake stood there, watching it all. He still had that folder in his hand, but he didn't need it anymore. He'd already won. The cop walked over to him and said, "We'll get this back to your place tonight." Jake nodded. "Thanks," he said, simple as that. He didn't cheer or jump around. That's not Jake. He just watched as the tow truck pulled his truck out of Karen's yard and rolled down the street, back to where it belonged. Karen. She wasn't done yelling yet. "This is unfair," she cried, stomping her foot. "I didn't do anything wrong." But the first cop walked up to her and said, "Ma'am, you're coming with me. We've got some questions for you." Karen's eyes got wide. "What?" she squeaked. "You can't arrest me." The cop didn't say much, just, "We're not arresting you yet. But you've got a date with a judge." A date with a judge? That meant she had to go to court and explain herself. And with all that evidence Jake had, it wasn't looking good for her. The cop took Karen by the arm, not rough, just gentle, and led her to the police car. She was still talking, saying stuff like, "This is crazy. I'm a good person." But nobody cared anymore. The crowd watched as she climbed into the back of the car, her head down. The door shut with a loud thunk, and the cop drove off. Karen was gone, off to face the mess she'd made. Let's stretch this out a bit, because this is big. Back at the barbecue, people couldn't stop talking. The party was over, no one wanted burgers anymore. The music stopped, and the tables just sat there with cold food. Mrs. Ellie walked over to her porch, shaking conscientiously her head. "That Karen," she said to herself. "Always thought she was better than us. Look at her now." Mr. Thompson stayed in the yard, talking to some neighbors. "Jake's a quiet one," he said, "but he's smart. Outsmarted her good." Word spread fast, like, super fast. By the next morning, everyone in town knew what happened. The kids told their parents. The parents told their friends. Even the guy at the diner was talking about it over coffee. Quiet Jake took down Karen, they said. Can you believe it? People who'd never paid much attention to Jake before started looking at him different. When he walked by, they'd nod his way, like, hey, good job. Some even said, hi, Jake, with big smiles. He'd nod back, same as always, but now it meant something more. Karen, though. She wasn't so loud anymore. After that night, she kept her head down. No more standing on her porch, bossing people around. No more bragging or waving like she owned the street. Her smug attitude, the one that made her think she could take Jake's truck, was gone for good. She had to go to court soon, and everyone knew it. Stealing a truck wasn't a little thing, it was a big deal. And with Jake's evidence, she didn't have a chance. Let's go back to Jake now. That night, after the barbecue, the tow truck brought his truck home. It rolled up to his house, right where it always parked, and the driver unhooked it. Jake walked out to meet him. Here you go, the driver said. All yours. Jake nodded. Thanks, he said again. The driver drove off, and Jake was alone with his truck. He stood there for a minute, just looking at it. The chipped paint, the dented door, the faded fish sticker, it was all there, same as always. But it was dirty now. Karen had used it for her barbecue stuff, and there were stains on the back, greasy spots from meat or sauce or something. Jake didn't like that. It was his truck, and he wanted it clean. So, he went inside, grabbed a bucket, some soap, and a sponge, and got to work. Let's picture this. It's dark out now, but Jake's got a light on his porch. The stars are twinkling, and the town's quiet again. He fills the bucket with water and adds soap until it's all bubbly. Then he starts scrubbing. He wipes down the back, getting rid of those barbecue stains. Scrub, scrub, scrub. He works slow and careful, like he always does. The grease comes off, and the truck starts looking like his again. He moves to the sides, then the hood, cleaning every spot Karen touched. It takes a while, but Jake doesn't mind. This is his truck, and he's happy to have it back. When he's done, he steps back and looks at it. The truck's not shiny, it's still old and beat up, but it's clean. It's his. He pats it on the hood, like you'd pat a dog. Good to have you back, he says, real quiet. Then he grabs his bucket and heads inside. He's tired, but he feels good. Really good. The next day, Jake parks the truck right where it belongs, out front of his house, by the curb. It sits there like nothing ever happened. The sun shines on it, and the dent catches the light. People walk by and see it. Jake's truck's back, they say. Some stop to talk to him. Hey, Jake, they say. Heard what happened? You showed her. Jake just nods. Yep, he says. He doesn't say much more. He doesn't need to. Let's keep going, this is too good to rush. A few days later, Jake's outside fixing something again, maybe his porch steps. Mrs. Ellie comes over with a plate of cookies. For you, she says, smiling big. You did good, Jake. He takes the cookies and says, thanks, Mrs. Ellie. She pats his arm and walks off, still smiling. Mr. Thompson stops by, too. Smart move, he says. Didn't know you had it in you. Jake shrugs. Just did what I had to, he says. Mr. Thompson laughs and nods. Well, you did it right. Karen's house stays quiet. Her fancy garden's still there, but she's not out tending it. Her curtains are closed, and her mailbox is full of letters she hasn't picked up. People walk by and whisper, she's got court soon. They don't feel bad for her, not after what she did. She tried to take something that wasn't hers, and now she's paying for it. Justice, right? That's what this is. Jake doesn't gloat, he's not that kind of guy. He doesn't brag or tell everyone how smart he was. He doesn't need to. Everyone already knows. When he walks down the street, people look at him different. Not just as Quiet Jake, the guy who fixes stuff. Now he's Quiet Jake, the guy who stood up and won. Neighbors who used to ignore him like the lady who never waved back start nodding his way. Morning, Jake, they say. He nods back. Morning. Let's stretch this out some more. A week goes by, and Jake's back to his routine. He's fixing things, helping people, keeping to himself. But the truck's always there, parked out front. It's like a little reminder, mess with Jake, and you'll regret it. The kids ride their bikes past and point. That's Jake's truck, they say. Karen tried to take it, but he got it back. They think it's cool, like Jake's a hero from a story. Karen. She's not around much. Word gets out that she went to court. The judge didn't like what she did. Stealing's a big no-no. She didn't go to jail, not yet, but she got in trouble. She has to pay a fine, a big one, and do some stuff for the town, like cleaning up the park. People see her there sometimes, picking up trash with a grumpy face. Her smug attitude? Gone. She doesn't talk loud anymore. She doesn't boss people around. She just does her work and goes home. Jake hears about it, but he doesn't say much. He's not mad anymore. He got his truck back, and that's what matters. One day, he's driving it to the store. The engine grumbles like always, and he smiles a little. It feels right. He parks, grabs some stuff, and heads home. People see him and wave. "Hey, Jake," they say. He waves back. Life's good again. Let's keep this going. The town settles down, but the story sticks. People don't forget what happened. At the diner, they talk about it over pie. Remember when Karen took Jake's truck, they say. He showed her. They laugh and shake their heads. Jake's name comes up more now, not loud, not big, just steady. He's part of the town in a new way. Karen's barbecue feels like a long time ago. Her house stays quiet, and her garden starts to wilt a little. She doesn't throw parties anymore, no one would come. She learned her lesson, hard and fast. Jake's truck? It's a warning now. Don't mess with quiet Jake. He's nice, he's calm, but he's tough when he needs to be. Jake keeps living his life. He fixes Mrs. Ellie's gate again when it squeaks. He helps the kids with their bikes. He drives his truck to the lake sometimes, fishing pole in the back. It's scratched and old, but it's his. And every time he looks at it, he feels good. He didn't yell. He didn't fight dirty. He just used his head and won. So, here's how it ends: justice served, big time. Karen tried to talk her way out, but Jake's evidence was too good. The cops towed the truck home, and Karen got her date with the judge. Word spread, and Jake got respect. Karen. She's quiet now, her smugness gone. Jake's truck sits where it belongs, clean and proud. He doesn't brag, but everyone knows, mess with Jake, and you'll lose. Hey, friends. We've made it to the end of this crazy story about Jake and Karen. The truck's back where it belongs, Karen's in trouble, and Jake showed everyone what he's made of. But before we say goodbye, let's talk about what this all means. There's a big lesson here, a super cool one, and I want you to think about it. Ready? Let's dig in. So, what's the lesson here? It's simple, but it's big. Sometimes the people who don't yell the loudest are the ones with the most strength. Think about that for a second. Karen was loud, super loud. She talked big, acted like she was the boss, and thought she could do whatever she wanted. She saw Jake and thought, oh, he's quiet. He's easy. I can take his truck, and he won't do anything. She figured because he didn't shout or fight right away, he was weak. But guess what? She was so wrong. Jake didn't yell. He didn't run around screaming or banging on doors. He stayed quiet, like he always does. But that didn't mean he was weak. Oh no. Jake had strength, real strength. Not the kind you see in muscles or hear in a loud voice, but the kind that's inside. The kind that waits, watches, and plans. Karen thought she could walk all over him because he didn't make a fuss. She thought quiet meant soft. But quiet doesn't mean soft. Quiet can mean smart. Quiet can mean strong. And Jake? He was both. Let's stretch this out a bit, because it's so cool to think about. Picture Jake at the start of the story. He's just a regular guy, fixing stuff, driving his old truck. He's not loud or pushy. He doesn't try to be the center of attention. People call him Quiet Jake, and they don't think much about him. Karen saw that and thought, perfect. He won't stop me. She took his truck, laughed about it, and waved it around like a prize. She never saw him coming. Not even a little bit. But Jake? He was coming the whole time. Every day she drove that truck, every time she bragged, he was watching. He didn't get mad and stomp over right away. He didn't cry or give up. He waited. He took pictures. He kept notes. He made a plan. And when the time was right, bam, he showed up with that folder and turned everything around. Karen didn't expect it. Nobody did. That's the thing about quiet strength, it sneaks up on you. It's there, hiding, until it's ready to shine. So, here's something for you to think about. Next time someone tries to push you around, remember Jake. Maybe there's a Karen in your life, someone loud, someone who thinks they can take what's yours or make you feel small. They might laugh or act big because you don't yell back. They might think you're weak because you're not loud. But you don't have to be loud to be strong. You can be like Jake. You can wait, think, and find a smart way to turn the tables. Let's keep going with this. Imagine you're at school, okay. Maybe there's a kid who's always bossing everyone around. They take your pencil or cut in line or say mean things. They're loud, and they think that makes them the boss. You could yell back, sure. You could get mad and fight. But what if you didn't? What if you stayed calm, like Jake? What if you watched and waited and found a way to fix it smart? Maybe you tell a teacher with proof, like Jake had his pictures. Maybe you team up with friends and show that kid they're not the boss. You don't have to shout to win, you just have to be strong inside. That's what Jake did. He didn't let Karen's loud mouth scare him. He didn't let her bragging stop him. He stayed patient. Patience is like a superpower, you know? It's when you wait even when you're mad and figure out the best way to fix things. Karen thought she was winning because Jake didn't fight right away. But waiting was his strength. Planning was his power. And when he finally stepped up, he won big. Let's stretch this out some more, because it's so fun to think about. Picture Jake at that barbecue. Karen's laughing, showing off his truck, saying, "Finders keepers." She's so sure she's got it all under control. She's loud, she's proud, and she thinks Jake's just gonna sit there and take it. But then he walks in quiet, calm, with that folder in his hand. He doesn't need to yell. He doesn't need to make a big show. He just says, "Karen, explain this," and opens that folder. Boom. Pictures, receipts, a police report, everything she didn't expect. Her loud world falls apart, and Jake's quiet strength takes over. That's the cool thing here. Strength isn't always loud. It's not always big punches or shouting matches. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's waiting. Sometimes it's being smart and patient until the right moment. Karen never saw Jake coming because she didn't think quiet could be strong. But it is. And you can be strong like that, too. So, here's a little tip for you, something to carry with you. Next time someone tries to push you around, don't think you have to yell to beat them. You don't have to be the loudest one in the room. You can be quiet and still win. A little patience and a smart plan can turn the tables fast. Jake didn't fight Karen with noise, he fought her with brains. He waited, he watched, and he won. You can do that, too. You've got that strength inside you, even if you're not loud about it. Let's keep this going, because this lesson is awesome. Think about your life. Maybe it's not a truck someone's taking. Maybe it's something else, your spot in line, your favorite toy, your chance to talk. There's always gonna be a Karen out there, right? Someone who thinks they're better, who tries to push you down. They might be loud. They might act big. But that doesn't mean they're stronger. Jake showed us that. He showed us that quiet can be tougher than loud any day. Imagine this. You're playing a game with friends, and someone keeps cheating. They laugh and say, "I win," even though they broke the rules. You could yell at them, sure. You could get mad and quit. Or you could be like Jake. You could watch. You could wait. You could tell someone who can fix it, like a teacher or a grown-up with proof. You don't have to scream to win, you just have to be smart. That's what Jake did, and look how it turned out. Let's stretch this even more. Picture Jake now, with his truck back. He's not bragging. He's not telling everyone, "Ha! I beat Karen." He's just living his life, fixing stuff, helping people. But everyone knows what he did. They respect him now not because he was loud, but because he was strong in his own way. That's the kind of strength you can have. It's not about being the loudest or the biggest. It's about being you, staying calm, and finding your way to win. So, here's the big wrap up. Stay strong out there, okay? Don't let the Karens of the world win. They might be loud. They might think they're in charge. But you've got something better. You've got quiet strength, just like Jake. You can wait, you can plan, and you can turn things around when it matters most. Karen thought she could walk all over Jake because he didn't yell. She was wrong, super wrong. And the next time someone tries to push you, they'll be wrong, too. Let's keep thinking about this. Life's full of challenges, right? Sometimes it's a bully. Sometimes it's a tough day. Sometimes it's just something small that bugs you. But you don't have to fight every fight with noise. You can fight like Jake with patience, with smarts, with strength that doesn't need to shout. That's the lesson here. That's the cool takeaway. You're stronger than you think, even if you're quiet about it. Imagine Jake driving his truck now. He's happy, he's calm, and he's got his life back. Karen's off somewhere, quiet for once, learning she can't push people around. The town's talking about Jake not because he made a big fuss, but because he stood up smart. You can do that. You can be the one who surprises everyone, not with loud words, but with steady strength. So, what do you say? Next time you're in a tough spot, think of Jake. Think of that folder, those pictures, that calm face at the barbecue. Think of how he waited and won. You don't have to let the loud ones win. You can turn the tables fast and smart just like he did. Stay strong, stay patient, and don't let anyone walk over you. You've got this.